Now to our weekly insider, an interview with a newsmaker with an inside track on a major news story. This week, Donald Trump's assault on law and order. As Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller's Trump-Russia investigation gets closer to the president himself, Trump appears to be doing everything in his power to fire Mueller. We've seen this before during Watergate in 1973.
The country tonight is in the midst of what may be the most serious constitutional crisis in its history. Half an hour after the special Watergate prosecutor had been fired, agents of the FBI, acting at the direction of the White House, sealed off the offices of the special prosecutor, the offices of the Attorney General, and the offices of the Deputy Attorney General. All of this adds up to a totally unprecedented situation, a grave and profound crisis in which the president has set himself against his own Attorney General and the Department of Justice.
Sound familiar? Yep. Nixon ordered his Attorney General to fire Special Prosecutor Archibald Cox. The AG and his deputy both refused and quit in protest. Nixon eventually found someone willing to fire the prosecutor, Solicitor General Robert Bork. The mass firing became known as the Saturday Night Massacre and eventually led to Nixon's resignation to avoid impeachment.
People have got to know whether or not their president is a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
Fast forward to today, President Trump seems perhaps to be executing his own Saturday Night Massacre, only in slow motion, setting the stage for eventually firing Robert Mueller. It started last January when he fired Acting Attorney General Sally Yates. Then, of course, Trump fired FBI Director James Comey.
It's my judgment that I was fired because of the Russia investigation.
And last month, Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe stepped down amid speculation he too was fired. Yates, Comey, McCabe, and Trump's slow-motion massacre may not be over. The next person most likely on the chopping block, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. He's the guy who hired Mueller. And right now, he's the only one with the power to fire Mueller. But there's another casualty in the crossfire here, and that's the very notion of law and order in the U.S. I'm joined by former New Jersey Attorney General Ann Milgram to help connect some of these dots. So, Ann, do you see a Saturday Night Massacre in slow motion happening here? Do you think that Rod Rosenstein will be fired? Will Mueller manage to hold on?
So, I think the one thing all of us should know is that it's dangerous to make predictions right now about what President Trump will do. I think it would be, even having said that, I'll jump in. I think it'd be very difficult for the president to fire Rod Rosenstein. That falls under the knowledge that we have of all these other acts, of the firing of Jim Comey, the comments about why he fired Comey, and just in everything together, I think really, in my view, mitigates against the president being able to do that. You know Robert Mueller. Do you think he can get this done, in spite of any effort to get rid of him or not? Can he get this done? So I overlapped with Robert Mueller when I was Attorney General in New Jersey, and he was the director of the FBI. I think he is an extraordinary person and prosecutor. He is the most apolitical person in the world that I could think about. And it's also important to remember, and I think we've spent so much time now talking about this investigation that we forget that he really is an American hero, because he is the one, he'd been the director of the FBI for about 7 days when 9/11 happened, and he completely transformed that agency into being an intelligence gathering national security force for our country to prevent future terrorist attacks. So I think he's extraordinarily talented. What I think we're seeing with Mueller, and I think it's really important to remember this, is that he's already charged 2 people, Paul Manafort and Rick Gates. He has guilty pleas from 2 people, Michael Flynn and George Papadopoulos. So his investigation is moving very quickly. We know, based on public reports, that he has interviewed a lot of members of the administration, former campaign officials, and even though it might not feel like this is moving quickly, I think for a criminal prosecution in the federal system, it's moving extraordinarily fast. And so I do believe he can get it done. I have a lot of confidence in him, and candidly in the career men and women who staff these organizations and agencies, and whose job it is to do justice and figure out whether crimes were in fact committed. If Trump does move him out or move on Mueller, what happens to the investigation? What happens to all the dirt that we're hearing about that's been collected? So there's two pieces to that. The first is that under the rules of the Department of Justice, Mueller cannot be moved out without good cause. And for that to happen, they would have to issue a report to the House Judiciary Committee. I assume that report would become public. And so I assume that you would see a broad American discussion and debate about this. And again, this feeds right into the actions and the words that we've seen by President Trump first firing Comey, saying he fired Comey because of essentially because of the Russian investigation. And so it would fall under, it wouldn't just be an independent individual act, it would be part of this entire thing that we've been watching for the past year. So that's the first piece.
We're out
the
of time,
second piece is that...
We're out of time, Anne, but thank you so much for this. Anne Milgram in New York.
Thank you.